just to catch everybody up a little bit about what we were talking about. Over the last 2 weeks, we've kind of been back and forth between Mark chapter 3 and Mark chapter 4. Specifically with Mark chapter 4, Jesus is teaching a lot of big things, right? He taught the parable of the sower, which we've gone over a couple of times. He also is teaching, if you are one of the seeds that fell on the right soil, then you're supposed to multiply yourself 30, 60, 100 times. Which means a couple of things. It means that you have to share who Jesus is, or else you're not multiplying yourself, right? From one oak tree, it has way more acorns than what will become more oak trees. Yet, what does it do? Every single year, there's acorns everywhere. Are you that type of person that's sharing the gospel like that? And he tells you you're supposed to do that, right? With the parable of talking about using your light. Is a lamp supposed to be under a basket or under a bed, or is it supposed to be put on a lampstand? We also have learned about the parable of the growing seed, right? So, the farmer goes out there, spreads seed, doesn't know how it grows up, but you see growth, and then the harvest is ready. And then you also see the importance of the kingdom, right? The kingdom looks small right now. That what you might have to share feels small right now. Who Jesus was when he's teaching that did not look like he was the Messiah, right? He looked like just some guy. And yet, it's saying from that little seed, that little weak thing, grows up, and it's so big, right? And so he's teaching all these things. Mostly, you have to keep sharing your faith. Why am I reviewing this again? Because I want to remind you who the book of Mark is written to. The book of Mark is written to Gentile Christians that are coming under incredible persecution. Incredible persecution. They're chased out of their homes. They're thrown into prisons. Some of them are killed for their faith. Big things, right? And what is Jesus' response to those people who are under great persecution? Keep sharing. Keep sharing. I know that it feels like it's only a little thing now, but you have to understand how big the kingdom of God really is. It's worth your suffering. It's worth being uncomfortable for. It's worth everything to keep doing what God is telling you to do, right? Well, I don't know how you feel, but if I was one of the Gentiles who have been majorly persecuted, right? Chased out of my home, my family is threatened, all of those things. You know what I'm thinking? Yeah, that's easy for you to say, Jesus, but look how I'm suffering. You have to show me who has the authority to tell me to keep going. And so that's what Jesus does. Remember, he's done this before already. And now he's doing it again. So we discussed this last week. What does he do after all these parables? He goes and says, let's go to the other side of the sea. This big storm comes up. They wake Jesus up and say, do you not care about us dying? He says, be still. And the sea stops and the wind stops. So we see that Jesus, who's telling us to continue to persevere, continuing to share, continue to push on, is over nature. We also see that Jesus is over the spiritual realm. So not only is he Lord of the earth, he's Lord of the heavens and the earth and over the demons and everything else, right? And so you see, Jesus goes up and he comes face to face with this demon and he's able to call the demons out. That's a big deal. So when Jesus is saying, hey, this is what I want you to do, it's worth it, we can trust him. Well, now we're going to go into this last story where you're going to see that not only is Jesus the Lord over nature, not only is he the Lord over the supernatural, Jesus has the ability to heal. And get this, Jesus even has power over death. If all of that is true, then Jesus truly is worth listening to, worth obeying, even worth dying for, because he has power over death. Now let's take a look at this. This is going to be in Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 21. So remember, in the background of this, Mark has covered the story about the storms. He's covered about how he cast out the demons. And still, by the way, at the end of that story with the demons, the people in the town were like, please just get out of here. They didn't want anything to do with Jesus. So now in verse 21, we're going to see how he can heal and how he has power over death. If you'll read along with me. When Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the sea. And one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, "My little daughter is dying. Come and lay your hands on her so that she can get well and live." Wow, that's a lot of faith, right? So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him. Remember, that's a huge problem that we're seeing in the book of Mark, that all these crowds are coming around him and pressing him and pressing him and pressing him, to the point that we've already seen Jesus is trying to get away from the crowds because it's too much. And so here they are again. The crowds are coming against him. Verse 25. Now a woman suffering with bleeding for 12 years. She had endured much under many doctors and had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came up from behind him in the crowd and touched his clothing. For she said, "If I just touch his clothes, I'll be made well." Instantly, her flow of blood ceased. She sensed in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Look at what Jesus says. Verse 30. Immediately, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. And he turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing, right? It's not just one person. Jesus, you're surrounded by people. And yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done this. And the woman, with fear and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction." Now let's stop right there, right? Because we're really focusing on how Jesus can heal. Right, so Jesus has been asked, "Can you please come and help my daughter? She is dying." Pretty urgent, right? Yes, that's very urgent. Like you can imagine your own children. Like, I don't know about you. When my kid hits his head on something, I feel, it's really urgent. But this girl, she is dying. Very, very clearly dying. And now these crowds are coming against him. And he's just pressing, trying to get towards the girl. And then he feels the power go out from him. Now, who did this? This is where the key to all of this lies. Who did this? It was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. For 12 years. Now, we could get really deep into this as far as what that means for her cleanliness and what that means religiously. Here's what you need to know. Because of her bleeding, she could not do regular religious activities. Because of her bleeding, she could not go to the temple where they believed that the presence of God was. So she feels separated from the presence of God. She feels separated probably from her family and her community. And so what does she do to try and fix this? Well, she gives everything. She goes to all of these doctors. She goes to all of these people who said, "I don't know, this will be experimental, but we could try and make this better." And so that she gave everything. To all of these doctors, to all of these people, she's tried every avenue that she could possibly go down. And what does she find? No help. In fact, she's worse off than when she began. So what's her hope? It's Jesus. But just think about this for a second. I don't know if any of you have been through something like this. This is pretty large. But I'm sure everybody in here has been through something that you just feel like if I could just get that next raise at work, or if I could just get over my diabetes, or if I could just get past this hump that's in my life, then everything will be all good. If I could only get married, if I could only have children, if only my kid would give me some grandchildren, then, yeah, now we're talking. And what happens is whatever we think will fix us, we will give everything to. We will give everything to it. If we think that doing travel ball will make my kid into like a cooler kid and a better friend and socialized, then we'll go all out. And we'll do that for years and years and years. If we feel like we just got to do that one more thing at work and stay overnight, just one more time, or if I could just get so much money in my bank account, then I can retire. And once I hit retirement, then everything will just be great. So you'll give everything to it. For this lady, I mean, she had something that was even separating her from her community. I mean, we can't even begin to understand this in this type of community. I mean, she really felt broken. The only thing that I could compare this to is maybe if you've had a miscarriage, or you've had multiple. And all you want is to be a mother. All you want to be is a father. And it just isn't happening. That depth of sorrow. That disconnect. That feeling of brokenness. Like, I can't fix myself. What's wrong with me? And so she does everything she can to be able to get to where she wants to be. And it just is worse. What a horrible way to live. And yet, so many of us experience these same things. We're chasing after, if only I had this, if only I had that. But she changes her hope. Right? The fact that she has any hope left, if I'm being honest, if I was her, I'd go lay down in a ditch and hope for the best. I'm just being honest. And yet, she hears about Jesus. And she puts all of her hope in him. She comes to him. She does everything she can to push through the crowds to get to him. Not to be able to talk to him. Not to have him lay his hands on her. To just touch his cloak. You know, we often get lost in how big of a deal that we have such free accessibility to Jesus. And how big of a deal that is. For this lady, she does everything just to touch his cloak. For us, we're fine missing a month out of the year because, well, I don't know, life got kind of crazy and kids had some ball games and there's vacation and, you know, so-and-so went to camp, and that was kind of on a Sunday, but it was an afternoon, but, you know, we wanted to sleep in. We're so casual when it comes to Jesus. And then we sit back and go, well, Jesus, where's my blessing? We make no pursuit, no prayers, no nothing, and then we become bitter when Jesus hasn't done something in our lives. If you want to see Jesus do something in your life, you have to put all of your hope, all of your hope, all of your hope in him. Period. End of discussion. That means everything that you do has to be trying to pursue after Jesus. That you don't categorize your life where you're like, okay, this section I'm going to do work, then this section I'm going to do kids, then I'm going to give Jesus my 1 or 2 hours a week, and then we're good. Then we really got it going on. And then get upset when Jesus doesn't bless you in this way, or you get a bad report from the doctor, or your kid's not doing great in school, or this or that. No, if you want God to really move in your life, if you want Jesus to really move in your life, if you want to experience the fullness of the fruit of the Spirit, all the promises that Jesus talks about, it doesn't happen when you're just casual. You do everything you can to be closer to Jesus. Then you begin to see things happen. You know, one thing I find super interesting. So as you can imagine, I talk to all the time. I just talk. And so I talk to everybody around me. And every once in a while, I get in a really good spiritual conversation. And so many people, I'll say, do you have any plans for church this weekend? Or do you go to a church anywhere? Or do you have a church home? Something like that. And they'll be like, no, but I pray every night. That's great. But then you start talking to them and they're like, well, I don't know about the whole Jesus thing. Who are you praying to? What are you talking about? Or I've legitimately, I was talking to this guy back in Pueblo, sweet guy. I mean, really is in Bible studies, really trying to figure out what he feels about the whole thing. But the one thing that he's really stuck on is whether God is real or not. And as I was leaving to move here, he said, man, I want you to know I'm praying for you. I want to be like, to who? Like, man, you're trying to figure out if God is real or not, but you're going to pray to me? Like, how crazy is that you think that there's a God who knows about you and loves you and wants the best for you, and he's given instructions for your life that will make your life better because it's the life you're always meant to live, and yet you do none of those things, and then you come to him because you think he's going to fix some petty problem. Like, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. If you want God to move in your life, you want to experience God in your life, you have to ask yourself, am I like this lady? Because otherwise you're just going to keep giving and giving and giving and giving and giving to all of these other things. And you will find nothing but brokenness at the end of that road. You say, I'm going to be a family man. You'll have fun being an empty nester. Some of these older people will tell you. If you make your life all about your kids, one day they're gone, then what? You make your whole life about retirement? Great, you made it. Then what? You spend the rest of your life going to doctor's appointments? You make your whole life about work. Then they tell you that you're too old, they give you a watch, and they kick you on the street. You'll find nothing but brokenness at the end of those roads. But if you will pursue Jesus, you will find healing in your life. If you pursue Jesus, he will give you the satisfaction you never, ever knew that you needed. For this lady, I believe, I'm reading into this, right? So you can have your opinions. I believe one of the things that really hurt this lady is that she could not go to the synagogues. She could not be close to God. And everything in her life says, I want to be close to God. For 12 years, she felt separated from God until she heard about Jesus. And then she said, I could be close to God if I go to Jesus. And she goes to wherever he is and pushes through the crowds. Doesn't care about being embarrassed. Doesn't care about being uncomfortable. Doesn't care what other thinks about her. And she goes and she reaches out. And we know it's embarrassing because when he says, who touched me? What does she do? She comes to him, shaking. She's trembling because the one who healed her is the one who's now calling her. And she falls at his feet and she says, I did it. I don't know. You healed me, but I don't know how to feel about this. And the one who she just wanted to touch his cloak speaks to her and says that your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction. I don't know what you guys are suffering with tonight. I don't know if there's hurt in your family. I don't know if there's hurt in your past. I don't know if there's just baggage that you don't feel like you can get over. I think many of us are trying to carry around far, far, far more than what we need to. And we say, I have Jesus, but we never really give him what we need. We never reach out and touch his cloak. we keep a distance from him. Tonight, I hope that you're hearing what this lady did and that you're encouraged to go, I could go to Jesus. And maybe this unforgiveness I'm feeling, maybe if I go to Jesus and I give it to him, I can learn to forgive. Maybe this hurt because of miscarriages or because of relationships that failed or because you're not as close to your kids as you wanted to be or whatever it is that you're carrying around with that's really hurting you. You could go to Jesus and Jesus will tell you the same thing, that when you say, I'm going to stop trying to do everything on my own and I'm going to give it all to you, I believe that he'll tell you the same thing. Give me your pain. Give me your affliction and go in peace. Does that mean that I think that it will heal you from every problem in your life? No, but that's a whole different theological answer because I believe that God sometimes uses really hard things in order to grow us up and grow our faith. Remember, this lady, it's not like she just started bleeding and went to Jesus, right? She's been bleeding for 12 years. For 12 years. For 12 years. When Jesus healed her, it made everything different. It took 12 years to have her faith grow like that. All that to say is, I hope you hear this, and if you're suffering with something tonight, just something's heavy on your heart, I don't know what it is. I don't know you guys that well. I want to, but I don't. I pray that you'll be encouraged to go to Jesus tonight. That you'll want to get just close enough to Jesus. Give him what you have, trusting that Jesus will begin to work in you the things that you haven't been able to fix in yourself. So she's healed. So not only is Jesus over nature, not only is Jesus over the spiritual, he can heal you. But Jesus is also over death. Check this out. So you have to continue the story, right? The whole reason why he's walking and this crowd is around him is because Jairus said, my daughter's really sick. Will you come and touch her and make her whole? Yes, okay. Verse 35. While he was still speaking, people came from the synagogue leader's house and said, your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? It's over. Too late, Jesus. Don't bother him anymore. Tell him to go away. We already figured it all out. Nothing more he could do here. Impossible situation. Verse 36, when Jesus overheard what he said, he told the synagogue leader, don't be afraid, only believe. And he did not let anyone accompany him except for Peter, James, and John, James's brother. And they came to the leader's house. And he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And he went in and said to them, why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep. And they laughed at him. But he put them all outside. And he took the child's father, mother, and those who were with them, and entered the place where the child was. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl got up and began to walk. She was 12 years old. And at this, they were utterly astounded. Then he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this and told them to give her something to eat. So what happens in this situation? Here's another impossible situation, right? Just like the lady, she's tried everything. It's over. But she goes to Jesus. Now, when the other people come to Jesus, they say, Jesus, you're too late. We believe that you could heal, but we're putting you in a box. You can only do so much, Jesus. And let me tell you, we do this all the time. We put God in a box so often that we often put that box on the shelf and hardly open it. What do I mean? Because it is our first instinct to try and control everything using our own power instead of going to Jesus first. One of the things I've been convicted of is, on youth trips, you always get around the van or whatever, and then you pray for your travels. And I always thought that was nice. But, I didn't do that, in my everyday life, right? So I just jump in my car, I put on my seatbelt, and I just start going. No prayers, no nothing. Everybody else prays before they start driving. Well, all right. Well, I'm a heathen, so I don't pray before I start driving. But I've had to start telling myself, like, Brant, just pray. Like what's going to be wrong if I pray? And I have. And let me tell you, I don't have like some miracle story about like miraculously not getting in a wreck or something. But it has just started to get me in the right mindset. That when I start driving, I'm just thinking about God. And like, I know this might sound hippy-dippy or whatever. The other day, there was a sunset, and I was praying about God. I was like, God, thank you for the sunset. I'm having like a 5-year-old prayer here, right? Thank you for the trees. Thank you for that. It's a beautiful day. Thank you. I'm not sweating like crazy right now. And all of a sudden, I'm thanking Jesus for all this stuff. And I'm like, where has this been? All that to say is, we don't thank God in the little things. And so when it comes to the impossible things, we'll pray for big, big things. But then at one point we go, well, it's all over. And then we think that like God dropped us off, that God left us out, right? I get that feeling, when so to tell you guys a little bit about my backstory, I moved from Mississippi to Delaware to be the kids minister of a church, and they showed me all their financials, and it was a friend of mine from class who was the pastor there, and he said, be the kids minister for a year. We got all this money and all these people, and we'll let you do a church plant up and around the area, and we'll just pay for everything. And I looked, and it looked like they could pay for everything. And after a month of working there, I realized that my friend had been embezzling a large amount of money, and that they did not have money at all. In fact, the church was in $1.5 million in debt. Really bad situation. And here I am with my recently new bride who had never lived out of Mississippi all the way up in Delaware, and we don't know how long we're going to be here. And I'm going, God, what's going on? Like, he very clearly told me to go to Delaware, and what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. And so we prayed that everything will work out. But then we find ourselves back in Mississippi living at my parents' house. And I said, no problem. God's just moving us from one place to another. We got it. I got as thankful as I could, and I started putting out resumes. So that was in November of 2019. So we got back in December. So I was there for 6 months total. So November was my last month. Got back in December, took the month off. Then I started passing out resumes in January of 2020. Everything shuts down in February of 2020. I can't find a job. And so I'm praying. I'm like, God, what does this mean? I'm like doing all these resumes. I'm like cleaning churches, trying to make ends meet. I mean, I'm like doing anything. I'm cutting wood for like pennies on the dollar, like anything. Just trying to make sure that I got enough money to like pay my car insurance. That was my whole thing. And I got to the point where I'm like, Jesus, do you even want me to be in ministry? And I'm like, God, it's your ministry, so whatever you want me to do. I think somehow I got the job. I mean, I got the job. I did the drug test. They told me when my first day was, I got the job. To be an HR rep, I have nothing that should make me an HR rep for Viking Range. And so I'm like, all right, well, this is what God obviously wants me to do, is just work human resources. No problem. That's great. I'll be a great deacon or whatever. Still just trying to be good. Then they sent everybody home. 2 weeks later, I didn't have that job anymore. And I'm still just going like, Jesus, I'm running out of money. I'm running out of time. Like, what are we supposed to do? This is an impossible situation. And I just keep going. I just remember I kept praying like, God, haven't I learned my lesson yet? And it just seemed more impossible and more impossible and more impossible. And I think that's part of what they're feeling here, right? That there's this little shining moment. Hey, my daughter, she's still alive. Everything is good. And so, Jesus, if you could come and do this very specific thing during the specific time, then it's all going to work out. But now she's dead. And it's impossible. No way. She's dead. They're all weeping. They're all crying. And what does Jesus say? He said, why are you crying? He says, she's not dead. She's just asleep. Well, what a crazy thing to say, Jesus. We all see that she's dead. It's over. And maybe you've had a situation in your life like that. Not the small things, not just thanking God for the small things or putting them in a box. Like it was a big, big thing, and now it just feels impossible. I don't know what that is in your life. But Jesus does have this to say. Don't be afraid. Only believe. Our God is not the God of this situation or that situation. God is not the God of your small expectations. God is not the God that we put in a box. Our God is so much bigger than that. And so when he comes, he goes inside, he takes the child by the hand and says, little girl, I say to you, get up. And she rises from what presumably is the dead. What does this all mean? This means the God that is telling you to share your faith is the God that can change nature at any moment. That means that the God that is telling you to share your faith is the God that's over the devil and his demons. The devil and God aren't the same. They're not playing the same ball game. Jesus is way above that. Way above every other name. This means that the Jesus that is telling you to share your faith, get this, is the God who's over all healing and the God who has won over death. Where are your excuses now? I was thinking about this the other day. This is a word to my older people. You know, when I talk to you guys, I love you guys, man. You guys are so faithful. But every once in a while, I just hear some things that concern me. Things like, yeah, we used to help with the kids, but we retired from that. Or we used to help with the youth, but we retired from that. Yeah, we used to do WMU, but we retired from that. You know, I'm just tired. I'm getting old. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, Jesus, what do you want me to tell them? This is what he told me to tell you. That God is the God of the impossible. Let me give you some backstory to this. You want to know how old Abraham was when God first came to him? Do you guys know? How old? I think he was 75 when he first came, and he was 100 by the time he had a kid. He was 75 years old. You don't think his knees hurt? You don't think his back hurt? You don't think he was tired? And yet God used him.
What about Moses?
I'm getting to Moses.
He was 120, and God said he was still a viable, strong man, but because of his sin, God had took him to bury him.
That's right.
That's miraculous.
That is miraculous. This is Moses. For the first 40 years, he lived in a lap of luxury. For the next 40 years, he had to go to work. He was 80 years old when he said, you're going to lead my people out of slavery. 80. You don't think his knees hurt? You don't think his back hurt? He might have been a viable, strong man, but like this, he's an old guy. He's old. He began when he was 80. Both of these men were instrumental in making and molding and starting the movement that is the Israelite people. I don't know how you guys feel today. I don't know what stage of life that you're actually in. I've never been old, right? But I can tell you this. If you're still here, God still got use for you. If you're still here, you can't retire yet. If you're still here, That means God has a purpose for you. You know, Paul talks about this. In one of his letters, he says, basically, this is the Brant Boldon paraphrase, okay? He says, I wish he would just take me to heaven. I wish that I could just not have to endure all that I'm enduring. And we know that Paul was all messed up, right? After getting beaten almost to death and thrown in and out of prison. And surely, he had some bad knees at least. He's hurting. He's saying, God, take me home. I would love that. But he says, but I'm not going to do that. Because God still has a meaning and a purpose for me here. So while you might think you've retired, the God of the impossible says, I still got you here for a reason. For those of us who are younger, you're thinking, I got young kids, or, I got so much to learn, whatever. What about Samuel, when God called him? What about Jeremiah, who I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think he was 17 when he started doing his prophecy. He was like a young man. So young, he's like, God, I'm the wrong guy. I'm too young. And yet God uses them. Why? Because God doesn't care about age. Only you do. God doesn't care about your excuses. Only you do. God isn't influenced by the weather, by the demons, by your health, or even by death. Only you're influenced by that. So you have to decide. Are you going to be influenced by what God is telling you or by everything else? From what I see is the Jesus who's calling me to share my faith, to be a light. The God who is telling me to share my faith, to trust that even though it's a little seed that I'm planting, that he's telling me to plant, that it could grow up big. That even if I don't know how it's going to be used or what it's going to look like, that it still has potential in the hands of God. That's my God. That's the God that says, I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you're dealing with. I have purpose for you. So go out and do it. That's what he was telling the Gentiles who were in persecution. That's what he's telling you today. You want some encouragement? This next section, really encouraging to the Gentiles. And I hope it's encouraging to you. Chapter 6. He left there, right after all of this. Miracle after miracle after miracle. He left there and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. And when Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many who heard him were astonished. They were amazed at his teaching. And this is what they said. Where did this man get these things? What is this wisdom that has been given to him? And how are these miracles performed by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And aren't his sisters here with us? Right? So what should their reaction be? Whoa! This is Jesus. Look at what he's doing. This is our guy. We should be proud of him. Look at what it says. So they were offended by him. And Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his household. And he was not able to do a miracle there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. He was going around the villages teaching. Here's Jesus performing miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. And yet, even he is rejected. Two things. This is my main thing. This number one thing. If Jesus can be rejected, then what's your excuse? Did this stop Jesus' entire ministry? No. There's a lot more chapters left in Mark. He still went out and did things. He was still a light. He was still doing his ministry. But Brant, they were offended by him. They didn't believe him. They were probably mean to him and mean to his family. Yeah. That didn't mean that he had to stop. It did mean that God did not do a mighty work there. That's a fact. But it didn't stop Jesus from actually doing what Jesus does. So what's your excuse? You say, I don't share with my neighbors because what if I'm embarrassed? Or what if they don't like what I have to say? Or what if they are like, I don't like church? Or what if they're like, oh, you're sharing with me? Aren't you the guy that 2 years ago, blah, 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 blah? If Jesus is rejected, we could expect to be rejected. Remember how rejected Jesus actually was? He was hung on a cross. I don't know the last time someone was hung on a cross for their belief in America. I don't know any stories. So obviously it doesn't happen much. So what are you worried about? Jesus, who controls everything, miracle after miracle, he was even rejected. What makes you think that you're any better? So here are the choices. Either you really care about what people think about you, or you really care about what God thinks about you. And those are incompatible. Incompatible. Remember what I said on Sunday, last Sunday, so you have to really think, right? It wasn't just a few days ago. This is what Paul says. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. For am I now trying to persuade people or God? Am I striving to please people? For if I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Do I need to say that again? So we really get this. If I'm trying to please people, to where everybody likes me, nobody hates me, everything's all good, nobody's bothering me. If I live my life like that, then I'm not a servant of Christ. You know what that means? You're going to bother some people. You're going to annoy some people. But you have to decide, is the little bit of being uncomfortable, is the little bit of rejection, is the little bit of whatever negative comes with it, is that worth an eternity for that person? Is that worth for them to have a relationship with Christ or not? That's when we get down to brass tacks, when we get down to the very foundations of what we're talking about, that's all that's going to matter. Live as long as you want, but at the end of the day, when your life is over, one thing matters. And it is whether you accepted Christ or not. And for those of us who've been given the keys to the kingdom, do not share. We will have to go before God and explain why. It's worth the little bit of rejection. How do I know that Jesus wants this for you? Look at this. I love how Mark is written out. You guys see how logical he's writing all this stuff out? The ebbs and flows and the answers to the questions. How do I know that the rejection is going to be for us as well? Or what we should do? Look at what he says. Verse 7. He summoned his 12 and began to send them out in pairs and gave them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing for the road except for a staff, no bread, no traveling bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not to put on an extra shirt. And he said to them, whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that place. If any place does not welcome you, here it is, or listen to you, when you leave there, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. So what is he saying? Go out, do what I told you to do. And even when you do it, some will reject you. So what do? Shake the dust off your feet. And look at what they do. Verse 12. So they went out and they preached that people should repent. And they drove out many demons, anointed many sick people with oil, and healed them. What should we do? Do we need a big ministry? Do we need a big church? Do we need a big bombastic program? Do we even need a building? The disciples didn't. What did Jesus say to take? He said a staff and some sandals. That's it. Not even an extra shirt. And what did they do? They went and they preached that people should repent. And God used them. Guys, I think sometimes we just make church way too complicated. We make religion way, way too complicated. Like, not to say that, like, nice things aren't nice. Like, I'm so blessed by this building. I am so blessed by our kids' ministry, by our youth. I'm so blessed that we could have AC in here. I'm so blessed that I can have an extra shirt when I get home. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so blessed. And yet, we sometimes we get so caught up in just all the little details. When at the end of the day, what is Jesus asking you to do? What does obeying Jesus, according just to the book of Mark, right? We've been through, it's nearly 6 full chapters. What has Jesus told you to do? Pretty much one thing over and over and over and over. And that is that you need to share your faith. Forget fundamentalism, forget legalism, forget so many other things. Like, he's just telling you, if you just read this one book so far, it's one thing. It's a one-note song. Share your faith. And what do you need to do that? Well, if we look at the demon that was healed, and Jesus said, go and tell the people. He didn't even have a large knowledge of the Old Testament. He didn't need that. He just needed to have a testimony about what Jesus has done in his life. For the disciples, what did they need? A staff and some sandals. That's it. And they were able to obey God completely. So here's my question to you. Are you obeying Jesus completely? Or are you maybe stuck in some other things? Are you stuck with some other excuses? I'm going to get into the rest of this starting next week. Is there anything that anyone would like to add in the stories that we've read tonight? No? Then let me give a summary. Jesus has told you to share. Through his parables, he's told you need to share. When he told the 12 to share, it's a calling for us as well. Well, how can I do that? Because Jesus, who is over all of nature, all of the supernatural, all of my healing and my health, and even over death, is with me every step of the way. If Jesus is with me, then I can do what he has asked me to do. Let me say that one more time. If Jesus is with me, then I can do what he's asked me to do. What about all this other stuff, Brant? Well, we read. We could be like the woman that was bleeding for 12 years, trying to find satisfaction in anything else in the world, trying everything that she can, spent every last dollar. And she still needed to find Jesus. You found him. You know what to do. If you say that I believe in Jesus, you've been planted on good soil. Congratulations. What are you doing to multiply yourself 30, 60, and 100 times?